Welcome to the official Lakes International Comic Art Festival podcast. My name's Ian.
And my name's Nikki, bringing you the best in comics and graphic novels and updates from the festival.
Hello and welcome to the Lakes International Comic Art Festival podcast episode 71. My name is Ian.
And I'm Nikki.
And we're missing Tom today.
Why? Where did we put him?
We put him in the cupboard and we forgot the key.
Oh no.
What was that?
That was my impression.
Was it even Scottish?
I can't do a Scottish accent. I wasn't even going to like become offensive by trying to do a Scottish accent. I was just doing like a let it out little voice. That was all.
Let it out. Let it out.
The cat did.
So Mike is on today talking about Williams Gibsons Alien 3 screenplay adaptation from Dark Horse, and tells a curious story of the other lost scripts. That's me reading.
That was you. It wasn't good, was it? Let's be honest.
And Tom has a chat to Nigel.
I thought you said Tom wasn't here.
Pete also has a chat to Nigel.
It's going well.
From Mayamada. A lovely guy.
Yes, he is lovely.
We met him at a few cons now.
We have.
So yeah, there's about 30 minutes worth of chat going on there. You know, he's taking over.
I know. I do think we need to muzzle him.
And we have a chat to the lovely Alex Paknadel.
Yes.
Who was a gent to talk to.
He was a complete gent.
And he's got another announcement come out today about another Marvel comic.
Oh.
So he's
on the up and up,
But remember, you heard his first announcement spoken here first. Yeah,
exclusive.
That's how it is. Spoken exclusive.
Yeah.
So no, he's a lovely guy, and
really lovely guy.
Need to,
he's in America still, isn't he?
He is. He's like 3 or 4 weeks over there, isn't he?
It's not a holiday, no.
No, it's not really. It's going to be hard work, I'm sure.
Hard work.
Hard work, yeah.
We had a terrible flight going by Twitter.
Well, we've got some bits and bobs to talk about, comic-wise. Mm-hmm. So let's roll straight into that, I think, on this episode.
Go, roll into it.
I'm going to first of all talk about Canopus from Dave Chisholm. Do you want to give us a blurb?
Oh, right,
Even though you've not read this one.
I haven't actually.
Blurb it up.
Okay, I'll blurb it up. Oh, this is the one you were telling me about this morning.
Well done.
Helen wakes up marooned on a lifeless alien planet, 300 light years from Earth, with no memories beyond a hazy sense of extinction-level urgency to return to Earth. Joined by her robot companion, Arthur, she explores the planets to find materials necessary to repair her ship. However, circumstances are not as straightforward as they seem. Along their perilous path, Helen's most painful memories return to her as monstrous manifestations, I almost said it right, hell-bent on her destruction. In this mind-bending sci-fi adventure, Helen's story unfolds into her past and future, revealing a poignant conclusion that will leave you speechless.
Speechless.
No, it doesn't leave you speechless. You've got to talk about it, love.
Well, that's it. They've left me speechless, so I'll just shut up. So, as the story says, it follows this lady up in space who just wakes up.
On the moon.
Not on the moon, not having a clue what's going on. Spaceship not working. And then she has this cute little robot-y type dude helping her, calling her mum, which she's confused about and doesn't understand as to why. And it's a little bit Black Mirror-ish, I suppose. It's probably you could see this as an episode if they could do the effects within Black Mirror of this just not understanding what's going on. This twisted time and space. She sees a dad who's dead, who went up to the moon and died many, many moons before.
This is the standard of the show today.
And then other things come out which are very freaky and weird, and she's not understanding that this isn't reality sort of thing. Something's going on. I like the art in it. I do like the art. I like the differences between the past and the present that he puts within the work. It's a 4-part series, so I think issue 1's out now. Issue 2's on its way, obviously. Followed by issue 3 and 4, surprisingly.
Do you know that's how it happens?
It's amazing,
usually.
Isn't it? And I think, it's a nice series. Scout Comics printed it, so it's well worth checking out this one. Do enjoy it. So, Canopus, number 1 onwards, by Dave Chisholm.
Thank you very much.
So the next one is from our lovely friends at Nobrow.
Yes.
They are...
I love their paper. But anyway.
I love the way the paper smells.
I don't.
Go on. Do you want to give us the blurb on this first of all.
Do you want to announce what it's called?
Well, you can say it first.
No. Oh, don't make me say it. No.
Gamayun Tales.
There we go.
1.
Yes.
By Alexander Utkin.
Really?
An anthology of modern Russian folk tales.
Right. Do I need to read the back of this now? Enter a world of magic and adventure in this comics collection based on traditional Russian folklore. In The King of Birds, a quarrel between a mouse and a sparrow over a golden apple leads to a civil war. In The Water Spirit, an unwitting merchant is tested and tricked by a powerful creature. Then it's a race against time in Tina of the Lake, as a young boy must find a willing ally to help him escape a watery doom. Ooh.
So as it says there, it's 3 short stories that are all intertwined.
Yes.
Within one long narrative, essentially.
Yes, yeah.
See, I'll put that together.
That was almost
professional. That
was like intelligent.
So go on. Do you want to give a basic overview since you read it first?
I did read it. As soon as it came through the door, I was like, I like the look of that one. So yes, I sat down and read that one. I love folk tales anyway, and I love learning about other cultures' folk tales. So it's beautiful. So at the start you are following a mouse and a sparrow who have an argument over a golden apple.
Of course.
And then, like it says, a civil war does ensue. I don't want to give too much away, and you always look at me and smile, and then it puts me off.
I do not.
You do.
Sorry. I'll scowl at you.
Do that. I don't know how to explain it all. Anyway, a woodcutter type person finds, because there's a big war, the eagle gets harmed in it, doesn't it, basically? Mm-hmm. A guy finds it, and then the eagle takes him on a journey to say thank you, because he doesn't kill the eagle, and he can talk to animals now. But anyway, he goes on a journey with this eagle to see his 3 sisters, basically, and he's told to ask for the chest. So they go see the copper sister, the silver sister, and the gold sister. And they ask for the chest in each time, and then each sister, apart from the gold one, goes against that request. So you get all that adventure. I don't want to put too much.
No,
you get all that adventure in between of all 3. Then when he finally sees the gold sister and a resolution is done, he's then given another task, which is not to open the chest. But he does. And then he meets a water. So we're going to the second story then.
It continues to the second story,
yeah. So that goes into there, and I say I don't want to give too much away.
The art in it is
Shall I stop now?
Gorgeous. Well, you didn't even have to say that then. You could have just continued with the flow.
Oh.
Anyway, the art it's beautiful. I think that's something you're one of those people that opens a book and looks at the art straight away, aren't you?
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I like that. Right, that's pulled me in. Almost.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, the front page, that front cover is so intricate and beautiful and different. The art is a different type of...
It fits with the whole style of it being folktale.
Yes, yeah.
Essentially.
And it's just a beautiful, beautiful book in all areas. The story is well written. I mean, it moves along. The pace is so fast that I read that book in one sitting and I didn't realise the time had gone. It's that good.
There's 3 more volumes as well.
I know, fantastic.
Or was it 4 more volumes? No, 3 more. 2 more. No, just 1.
Wow. So it was at 4, 3, 2, 1.
You can buy them individually. There's a second volume coming out.
Right, okay.
Do talk crap sometimes. But no, I think, this is, if you see that on the shelf, as with many Nobel books, it's one that is well worth picking up for kids as well as adults.
Yes, definitely.
It's something anybody can get into and enjoy.
And you learn small folktales, and I love learning mythology and folktales. So
it's interesting how you see a few bits jump out that they've jump into other folk tales and stories and mythologies, and they're all crossed as well, aren't they?
Of course they are,
They all steal from each other, essentially.
Well, yes, they all develop. It's like any story. There isn't any fairy tale, any mythology. They all come from the same place, and then they intertwine like a big tree.
Like a big tree.
That's how I'm going to describe that.
Well, ours are kind of boring over here in Britain, aren't they?
No, they're not. We've got some great ones.
Like?
We've got King Arthur.
It's not big flappy birds.
No.
No. They're not as exciting.
No.
But we know how to
Beowulf.
cue. Exactly.
We know how to cue. Thanks for that one.
Cue.
Oh.
And that's what matters. A bit like last time, I'm going to talk as well finally about a free comic strip. This is by Jamie Smart, Talking to Dad. And now this, I messaged you whilst reading this at work.
I was at work.
And I was
I'm a mess.
I was in tears.
You were.
Hiding behind my desk on lunch break.
No.
It's a very small 2-page comic about how a son interacts with their father. It's not obviously in all cases, but this one actually resonated very much with me. About how you sort of lose the ability to connect with your parents, or certainly your father, because the differences in what you enjoy, especially we discussed the other night, especially at the ages where I was with my dad. He was much older than me.
Yeah.
From the generation...
It's good that he was older than you, being your dad.
Much older than me, I said, dear. From generation where they didn't know technology.
Yeah.
They weren't interested in technology. And then I'm growing up, all I care about is fantasy stuff and technology stuff. And that wasn't in his... He was cowboys and Indians as a kid, you know. And so he was loving it, he loved me, but we never chatted about stuff because we had no real interests. And that's what that felt this was like. You know, you don't... I think this is the case with your dad. He'll pick the phone up and then it's immediately passed almost to your mum half the time.
Yes.
Whereas my dad didn't even bother picking the phone up. It was my mum who always picked the phone up.
I think, like you say, it resonates with everyone because you all pick a part of that. And it makes you feel sad and a little bit guilty for not making the effort. Because, I mean, everyone's life takes over, don't they? And we don't leave them behind, but we don't give them the time. And I think that's... Because as soon as I finished reading that, I phoned my dad up. And he was out. So I got the answer phone. I was like, fine. But that's what it makes you do, that little comic. It makes you want to phone your dad up. And trust mine to be out.
I'm almost in tears at the minute.
Oh, no, don't read it again and get upset. But, I mean, that shows how good it is.
As he gets older, it gets harder. He slows down, can't hear as well. Takes time to think about his replies. You get frustrated. His pacer's life isn't as quick as yours. I'm going to keep reading it. He's still there whenever you lose it. Breakups, work problems, general traumas. Sometimes his sage voice is all you need. It fills the silence when you can't speak. But his world is different to yours now. He doesn't want trouble. He doesn't want to trouble you with his life. He's just happy to hear about yours. Yeah,
that's the bit that got me.
Then it goes on, but then you hear those words, and your heart literally runs cold. Dad died. So sorry. You'll never be able to speak to him again.
Suck it in. Suck it up. Wipe the tears away, dear. You've got yourself in a...
I think you don't want, or you don't expect your parents to die, certainly if they're under a certain age.
Yeah. Well, they've been there all your life, haven't they? They're the constant.
I think when, if you're lucky enough to have parents who get into the 90s on, then you're like, yeah, they're going to go one day, you know. But mine was just hit 70. And I was in my 20s. And I didn't expect. You know, he was ill in hospital. And looking back now, you can see it. And he even sort of held my hand and said goodbye that night. He died, which was very weird. But at the time, you think, oh yeah, he'll be fine. He'll be out in the morning. He'll be out in a few days.
Yeah.
And then you get a call in the middle of the night. And I think it was like 2-3 o'clock in the morning, but I just jumped out of bed like it was 7 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Got dressed, went round to mum's, and it's like, oh, what time? Yeah, that comic is perfect and hits every single verse of how my life was with my dad. Not everyone's is the same, obviously.
No.
And I think... Sorry, I'm mumbling here.
No, carry on.
I think in this day and age, a lot of us are lucky that we won't have that issue with our kids because we've grown up with what they enjoying. We were saying again the other day, music hasn't changed much since we were kids. No. You know, the 90s and 80s different, but 90s onwards. Yeah. In fact, there's a lot of 80s stuff coming back now and so forth.
That's not a good thing.
Fashion hasn't changed that much realistically.
Not really.
No. You get the odd silly thing like pants down the ankles, but, you know, it doesn't really change. Pop culture started realistically in the 80s in the big way. So we've all grown up being complete nerds, and we're all like, you know, the kids love the films from the 80s and the 90s as well as in the modern day films. It's all the same.
And to be fair, all films now are copying the ones we watched, so that's fine.
So you can, the internet, unless you're just not savvy enough, you know what's going on. You're all watching YouTube, the same thing. Might not be exactly the same thing as what the kids are watching, but we understand what they're watching. We understand why they're watching it and what they're enjoying about it. And it's a different world, I feel, that we can have a good idea what our kids are talking about. Yeah. Which my dad didn't have a clue when I was talking about Mega Drives and Star Wars, and he had no interest either.
I was going to say, yeah, it was different because my dad not so much, but my mum would sit upstairs with us and play, the golf game and Sonic and stuff on the Master System too. And we'd sit and program spectrums together. So, and my dad would be in the room. He wouldn't be getting involved, but me and mum would and stuff. So,
no, I wasn't interested.
But then we had family board game nights and stuff.
So we didn't.
So we had to, we all had to talk to each other then.
I remember being bought Hero Quest. I never played it once. Yeah. I built the models and I pretended on the board, but I had no one that. That's the difference again. If it was now, it'd be like, oh yeah, well let's try it.
Yeah, we'd get out and
have a go.
Grab the kids.
So it's a different, completely different world for the better in this side of things.
Oh yes, definitely.
Because there isn't that disconnect. I'm sure there is again in some places.
Oh, of course there is.
There's going to be people who aren't interested like we are in all this nerdy stuff and so forth. But I still think there's less. Yeah. Overall. Well, that was different.
I think your therapy session is now over.
Well, this is showing,
and that
isn't
will cost.
If that was written down in 2-page document, I wouldn't have read it. The fact that was essentially, 12 panels, and it took me a few minutes to read, yet it's affected me so much, says what comics can do. Yeah, exactly. What they can do with the world of the internet, because again, it is just a quick Twitter scroll, and there it is popped up, because he put it out for everyone to read. Yeah. And how comics have probably got more value for those short worths than just writing it down. Yeah. Definitely. Right, anyway. Let's get to the positives.
Well, it's positive.
It is. I want to do an episode, I think I said to you, about grief and comics down the line. There's a certain person in mind which we'll discuss 6 months down the line if they're willing to do it. Because I think it's important. Yes. To talk about these things and to talk about the process of creating work where you're talking about things that have really affected you. We've had some people talking about their lives, but not necessarily grief as such. So. Yeah. Anyway, that's for a future episode. Right, let's let Mike and Pete take it on and enjoy our chat with Alex as well. Yes. And we'll see you on the other side when I've wiped my eyes.
Mike's Mutterings.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Mike's Mutterings. Today I want to talk about Dark Horse's comic adaptation of the infamous and unproduced script for Alien 3 by sci-fi author and futurist William Gibson. I guess it's only a small part of it really, it's a much longer story, and I'm going to try my best to tell the end-to-end tale of the quest to get the third Alien film written and eventually filmed. The many creative choices that they made along the way, rightly or wrongly, and why it's worth delving into these discarded attempts. And once again, yes, I've not only managed to sneak in my love of the Alien franchise into another episode, but also shoehorn in my favourite author. So, let's set the scene. In 1979, the groundbreaking sci-fi horror Alien hit the big screen, written by Dan O'Bannon and directed by Ridley Scott. It gave us a gritty, realistic view of space travel, with the roughneck crew of the commercial haulage ship Nostromo facing the nightmarish horror of an alien organism genetically programmed to hunt, kill, reproduce. Whilst exploring a distress beacon from a desolate, uninhabited moon, LV-426, Executive Officer Kane is attacked and unwittingly used as a carrier by the organism. What follows is a roller coaster of cat and mouse hunting through claustrophobic corridors, jump scares, body horror, and corporate greed. The sets felt very lived in, the characters flawed and natural. Even the unnatural alien creature inspired by H.R. Geiger seemed believable, a merging of lots of real-life horrors of actual nature, all vertebrae, shiny carapaces and exploding egg sacs. The explosive finale saw the destruction of the Nostromo, the alien parasite blown out into space, and the escape of the hero of the hour Warrant Officer Ellen Ripley and Jones the Cat as they prepare for hypersleep. In '86 we got the long-awaited sequel, Aliens. This time, James Cameron stepped in to not only write but also direct. Ripley and her cat Jones are rescued 57 years later and immediately debriefed by the Weyland-Yutani Corporation. She finds herself cajoled into accompanying a team of US colonial marines to investigate the loss of contact from a colony on the now terraformed LV-426 moon. The action is scaled up as the fully armoured military might of the USCM goes toe-to-toe with a full-on xenomorph infestation. The film retains its horror origins, but brings in amazing action scenes with waves of alien drones swarming against hardened grunts with serious firepower. Slimy, backstabbing characters and flawed heroes pitted against the relentless, emotionless detachment of the aliens. And Ripley once again finds her survivalist and fighting instinct, managing to barely escape with damaged synthetic Bishop, wounded Marine Corporal Dwayne Hicks and young colonist Newt on the Marine ship Sulaco. Now our story starts in 1987, following the release of that hugely successful sequel. It comes as no surprise that the studio is desperate for a follow-up, and so the whole Hollywood process of writing treatments, swapping rights and negotiating contracts begins. But first things first, you need a shooting script. And for Alien 3 this was no easy journey. In fact, it descended into what is now known in Hollywood terms as development hell. Firstly, we have the short 15-page treatment from the producers Walter Hill and David Giller. I've never seen this document released online, but I do know that it involved the Sulaco crossing into a region of space occupied by the Union of Progressive Peoples, an anti-corporate Marxist regime. The principal setting for the action was to be a futuristic city, and Giller had just finished reading Neuromancer and decided that William Gibson's writing would be perfect for creating this futuristic metropolis, despite the fact that Gibson had actually never written a script before in his life. But, as it happened, he jumped at the chance given his absolute love for the franchise. And Gibson loved the idea of the Marxist UPP opposing the capitalist Weyland-Yutani and went full Cold War with it, with the Sulaco malfunctioning and veering into UPP territory, spreading the alien threat first there and then continuing to its destination, the Weyland-Yutani port of Anchor Point, spreading the infection further. With both sides paranoid of each other, they start to seek out to weaponize the alien, resulting in utter disaster. It should be noted at this point that a comatose Ripley is sidelined completely from the action, and it's Hicks, Bishop and Newt that hit the ground running. Sigourney Weaver was hesitant to reprise the role at this point, and this suited Gibson as his favourite characters from Aliens was Hicks and Bishop, so they pretty much steal the show here. His second draft clawed back some of the many characters he'd created, and the more spectacular and expensive battle scenes. Instead, the smaller cast were fleshed out more and more drama and political manoeuvring added. But something just wasn't hitting the right buttons for Hill and Giller. In '89, they brought in established screenwriter Eric Red. He had cult films Near Dark and The Hitcher under his belt, and his dark style proved pretty much what they were looking for, and they wanted it fast, real fast. In fact, they gave him 2 months to turn the script around. The result was bizarre, to say the least, and later disowned by Red himself. The script starts with special forces raiding the Sulaco and finding only alien horror and no survivors at all. The whole film is then transplanted into a classic Midwestern town called North Star, recreated perfectly in a spacefaring biodome. We're talking alien hordes bearing down on townspeople and farmers here, a sort of aliens versus good old boys. And boy, does it get crazy. The aliens find the place ripe for reproducing, and it descends into old MacDonald had an alien. You get pig aliens, cow aliens, and even, and I'm serious here, chicken aliens. Yeah, chicken aliens. The standout scene has to be the enraged hockey bomb chainsawing up alien critters by the dozen. The tone is just so off and just doesn't blend into the original films at all. I feel really sorry for Eric because he had 2 months and constant studio interference. He didn't stand a chance. But you've got to admit it piques your interest, doesn't it? Well, just Google Eric Red Alien 3 script and it's all there online in all its freaky glory. It comes as no surprise that the studios were taken aback by the results, and that's when they moved on to David Toohey to save them. But this time they pressed on Toohey to start from Gibson's last draft. In the intervening years, though, the Cold War had warmed a little and seemed no longer relevant, and that's when he moved the setting onto a prison planet, where lifers were being subjected to experimentation from the secret Weyland-Yutani bioweapons facility that the prison was hiding. The lab-grown alien material they used for research was lifted directly from Gibson's attempt, but the aliens were granted some extraordinary new abilities by Toohey. The script was also standalone and did not follow on from Aliens or involve the fate of any of its characters. But Ripley not being present made the studios nervous, and it looked like getting the star on board was essential. Heavy gun use was also out of fashion at that time in Hollywood, and the studio forced yet more rewrites to bring back Ripley into a firearm-free death zone. Script development was stalling badly, and David Hill once again reached out for more talent. This time, writer-director Vincent Ward and scriptwriter John Fassino. It took time and effort to persuade Ward onto the project, and unfortunately Ward was not a fan of Toohey's Prison Planet. The script that Ward produced was astonishing, to be fair. With the knowledge that Sigourney was now committed to returning as Ripley, the script sees the Sulaco and sole survivor Ripley crash into Archeon, a wood and metal manufactured planet of devout monks. She finds herself the only female amongst nervous, celibate religious fanatics who shun all but essential modern technology. It's extremely well written, some great back history for the monastic order, and the primitive weapons available make tense alien encounters. The design work around the look and the feel of this anachronistic space station is fascinating, and again the designs and the script are all freely available. Just do the Googling and they're all online. There was no doubt that some of the sequences would make stunning cinematic set pieces, but that was what actually worried many production staff. The whole wooden planet concept, which many believe actually made this script, was just deemed too problematic to bring to life on screen. So at this point the producers Hill and Gillett are now sat with a huge pile of costly scripts, full of a mix of plots, characters, concepts and designs. First, they tried to enhance the Ward-Fasano script with the help of script fixer Larry Ferguson. But this was met with criticism from lead actress Sigourney Weaver amongst others, and so, finally, they took it upon themselves to take sole responsibility for the script, combining what in their opinion was the best of the best the scripts had to offer. And the result was what we all know now as the finally released film. The main plot and most of the characters are taken from the Ward and Fasano Space Monastery epic. The low-tech Nothing Works environment was taken from Toohey's Prison Planet idea, and Ripley's final sacrifice to foil the nefarious schemes of the Weyland-Yutani Corporation completes the journey. I remember the fan outrage when Alien 3 hit the screens, and how they felt cheated that Hicks and Newt were written out so casually. But can you imagine if they'd gone with the original idea? An Alien film without Ripley? The only necessary character was Ripley. The franchise is nothing without her. It's her journey and her warrior spirit that's the linchpin of the whole series. I was sad to see Hicks and Newt get sidelined, but it was necessary, I think, in the final film. So it was just Ripley left on the prison planet with just the prisoners that had found religion. The real isolation of it was necessary, I think. Michael Bain, who played Hicks, was pretty devastated at the decision. So he made sure that he earned more for his likeness being used in Alien 3 than he made for the entire of Aliens. The whole reason I got thinking about the epic journey that Alien 3 went through just to get a script, and that it might make an interesting topic, was that I just finished reading the Dark Horse comic adaptation of William Gibson's unused second draft. It was released in 2018 as a 5-part miniseries, scripted and drawn by Johnny Christmas and coloured by Tamara Bonvillain, both of whom were highly praised by Gibson himself. Although Gibson's script was never considered a contender by the studio, I think it's a seriously authentic Alien franchise movie, and it helps build the setting. The Union of Progressive Peoples is a believable, ideological stance in the corporate-driven depths of outer space. It gives a plausible target as well for Weyland-Yutani's aggressive drive to develop bioweaponry. And whilst Corporal Hicks and Bishop are centred to the action, they are joined by some strong, ethical and principled fellow protagonists, likeable, with backstory, relationships and drive. The troublesome bureaucrats and corporate elites have personality too, for a change, and Johnny Christmas impressed the hell out of Gibson by the way he brought them to life. The script really built on the foundation of the first two films and expands all the themes. The whole story is about conflicts, man versus nature, military versus science, corporate greed versus the working man, and something new thrown in, Marxism versus capitalism. It takes all these conflicts to a logical and bloody conclusion. Gibson also gives us a new strain of alien that feels more like a virus, a corruption of the genetic self. I always wonder if this speaks more of the time it was written, with the emergence of AIDS, perhaps. But the alien's ability to infect in a spore-like way actually predicts themes that were explored in the later prequel movie, Alien Covenant. Again, the genetic blending ability of Gibson's cloned alien biomatter resulted in horrific half-blends of human and alien. They're kind of reminiscent of the look of the Alien 4 experience. In another eerily predictive way, Gibson foretells the alien origin story from the prequel films, by Bishop referring to the xenomorph design as being an ancient engineered thing, likening it to the end product of somebody else's arms race. I actually own the collected hardback, and it's a gorgeous book, and it's finished off nicely with a gallery of design sketches and alternate covers. There's also a great foreword by Gibson himself, and it's great that he's excited by his screenplay again. After the initial rejections by the studio at the time, he jokingly summarised it as "Space commies hijack alien eggs, big problem in mole world." So, post-mortem time. Why didn't they use Gibson's script? Ironically, because Gibson didn't Gibson it enough. They wanted cyberpunk, a bit of Neuromancer, Count Zero and Mona Lisa Overdrive. What they hadn't counted on was that Gibson was an Alien fanboy, something he's declared many times, stating that Alan Dean Foster's original Alien book had a huge influence on his writing even. He wanted continuity to the original films, and he wanted to enhance the universe, not make it unrecognisable. Confusingly, I also love the way Ward's Wooden Planet did just that. It made the Alien universe slightly unrecognisable. I think it's a wonderfully imaginative piece of work, and it just would have been a real cinema experience, I think. And my thoughts on the actual film that got released? Well, yeah, I did like it, but it did feel choppy and a little mixed up, and it did have a very different tone. The ideas were cool though, and the amazing ensemble of British actors just shone through. However, I did mention the quadrilogy DVD box set earlier, and this is a must for fans because it brings together every theatrical release with every alternate or director's cut out there. And what that does mean is it's got the real fans version of Alien 3, so-called the assembly cut. The characters have far more time to grow proper personalities. The religious overtones are ramped up, and Ripley's isolation is just far more tangible. It's a noticeably different film, almost 40 minutes longer, with completely different plotlines, from how Ripley is rescued, how the alien first evolves, and even the ending. Superior in every way to the theatrical release. In conclusion, I'm really happy Dark Horse brought the unused script to life, and I hope they continue to do so with others. They did this under the 20th Century Uncovered label, and they've also released the comic adaptation of the original Planet of the Apes script. And I think they're about to release the original Predator story. I think it was called Hunter, but I think they're just going to call the actual adaptation Predator again. Back in 2013, Dark Horse also adapted the original Star Wars script, titled The Star Wars. It's really interesting. The Adventures of Anakin Starkiller. Could be another episode topic, perhaps. Well, if you have a free Sunday afternoon sometime, I seriously recommend Googling all the Alien 3 scripts and reading them in order. You'll spot a ton of idea and themes that were reused either in comics or later on in other films. But so many of these ideas are simply left to die. Understanding a way a film evolves, even badly, can be pretty interesting. As always, on Twitter, I'm @CthulhuPunk, and always happy to talk comics. Till next time.
Right, with us today we have Alex Paknadel. Have I said that right? Because I'm crap at saying names. Brilliant.
It's a lot of syllables, but it's phonetic, so it's nice and easy.
Yeah, but it's so easy to read things wrong, let's be honest. My name happens all the time.
Yes.
They just read it wrong. So I'm glad I got it right. Get in. Thank you for coming, Alex.
Thank you.
So, easy one to start with. What did you read when you were growing up?
70s Marvel, really, because of my dad. Basically, I went in... it's like, do you remember there was that Simpsons episode where Bart becomes friends with Ralph? Do you remember that one?
No. I feel I should.
Yeah,
Probably do.
yeah, basically, for one episode, like Ralph and Bart are forced to become friends.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And it all kicks off because they find sort of Chief Wiggum's sort of, weapons and everything.
Yeah.
And there's a bit where Chief Wiggum says to Ralph, Ralphie, how many times have I told you not to go into my forbidden cabinet of mystery? And it was kind of like that with comics for me, because my dad collected back in the 70s and early 80s, and kind of growing up, I wasn't allowed to read them. So that was it. Because I wasn't allowed to read them.
So yeah, it was going against the grain there.
Yeah, I used to try and break into the cupboard, but I wasn't tall enough. But then, by an extraordinary stroke of luck, I got seriously ill and had to go to hospital.
Oh no!
So and that was really lucky, because then he felt so bad because he thought I was going to die that he brought in a load of John Buscema Conan the Barbarians in for me.
Oh.
And that was that.
So did he keep that collection then?
Yeah, well, he still got it. He probably would mind me telling you this, but I mean, he was outstanding commitment. I mean, he got a copy of Giant Size X-Men 1, which I think was 73, something like that. And he was telling me about this, and he got a copy, and it was like 30 quid even then. So he'd had to save up all his pocket money for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks to get this thing. And ended up getting this copy. And as he was going home, he got hit. He was in his school uniform, his bike and everything. He got hit by a car. Oh. And he said it's the maddest thing. He twisted in midair so that his body would absorb the brunt of the impact rather than the comic.
Oh,
isn't that the most insane
that's amazing
thing?
That's dedication.
So, I think he emerged kind of unscathed, but it was one of those things of, take me instead, Lord.
Not my comic.
If they ever make your life story, you've got to include that somehow.
Yeah.
You've got to have that on a movie screen. You can just imagine it now.
Oh no, but I'm a millennial. I'm sorry, the comic's getting it. I'm far more important.
And we've got eBay. Easy to go and grab another one anyway.
Exactly.
It's not a problem. Okay, so was it mainly Marvel then you were reading back then, or?
Pretty exclusively, yeah. I didn't really get. I didn't sort of get into DC stuff until I sort of started. I mean, it couldn't really be more cliche. The first book I picked up with my own kind of pocket money. Mm-hmm. Was X-Men 1, the Jim Lee, Chris Claremont one back in 91.
Okay.
And I remember I got taken to Forbidden Planet there was a lot of sort of pomp and ceremony. Went to Forbidden Planet, picked it up, and, that was it. But after that, it's the good thing about comics, isn't it? They sort of grow up with you. And so I started getting into, I started becoming a bit more kind of omnivorous, I guess, when I started reading them and picking them up for myself. And because, at the time, all the sort of edgy, sort of bleeding edge stuff was sort of happening over at DC. I mean, it vacillates, doesn't it? It goes sort of back and forth between the big two, in terms of the sort of experimentation. But certainly, around about that time, Killing Joke and DKR and everything, that was all very kind of, again, it was... You were in the, not physically, but you're back in the forbidden cabinet of mystery,
Were there any particular favourite creators back then that jumped out to you?
Back then, I mean, the Image guys really. I mean, that's where I cut my teeth. It was sort of, McFarlane, Liefeld, Jim Lee, Mark Silvestri, Eric Larson, those guys. That was and it was again because it felt at the time quite. I don't know if you guys were sort of picking them up at the time, but it felt quite sort of rebellious in a weird way because it felt like a kind of paradigm shift. I mean, now you sort of look back at it and go, well, actually, no, it's all kind of a piece. But at the time, it felt. I mean, it sounds sort of churlish to say this, but a bit sort of punk rock, because it was the kind of thing where like my dad would pick up, X-Men 1 and absolutely hate it. And that was great for me. Rebel without a clue. But then, as I got older, by the way, I still have the utmost respect for all those guys. But then, you become a bit more kind of omnivorous. And then I started getting into, your Gaymans and your Moores and your Morrisons and, your Ann Nescentis and generally becoming more widely read sort of in general, really. And then, when I went to university, I had a sort of ill-advised period of, I've grown out of that now.
Yes.
And then sort of really regretted it. Yeah.
See, now normally at this point in interviews, we usually get to a point where the creator then leads from university into doing writing or drawing. But your story is very different, isn't it, in regards to how you came to create comics? Do you want to sort of lead us through it? Because from what I've read, it is an interesting story.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's not. I mean. It's a funny one, really, because, I always feel with these things that, it almost kind of behooves you to have a sort of, or it almost sort of behooves one to have a kind of rags to riches sort of trajectory. And like, I really didn't, I make no kind of bones about it. I had a lot of help, but yeah, I mean, I came, so, I did my degree, moved back to London, became a civil servant for a couple of years, which was just crashingly depressing on all fronts, really. And then sort of decided that I was going to, be very clever about things and go and do a PhD. So I came and did a doctorate, moved back up north, did a doctorate on J.G. Ballard. Just pure happenstance, I bumped into Andy Diggle, who'd moved up here with his family. We became friends and ended up becoming sort of pub buddies, really, along with a sort of wider circle of people like Sean Phillips and Paul Harrison Davies and Ant Mercer. Sort of lots of people live around here who are sort of directly involved in comics. I used to just sort of tell them my sort of stupid ideas, and this went on for, years, to the point where Andy just said, "I'm not listening to any more of your ideas unless you write them down." I said, "Well, but I've got this great thing, and it's actually, if you think about it, this idea is really about crop rotation in the 14th century." And and he'd just say, "No, just write it down. I'm not going to listen to it unless you write it down." So one day I did, and then we were at Thought Bubble over in Leeds, and he, it was one of those sort of weird life-changing moments, but because I'd actually, put pen to paper and put my, stopped talking the talk and started walking the walk, he sat me down in front of Will Dennis, who was the then outgoing group editor at Vertigo. And Will just said, "Oh, sure, send me some stuff, as you do." Got in touch with him, and then Will got in touch with me a couple of weeks later and said, "Look, I'm not making the move out to LA with DC, so I doubt I can kind of get this over the line at DC. But I know some guys at Boom. Give me a week and I'll make some calls." I got a call from Matt Gagnon at Boom within 24 hours, and he just went, "Right, let's do it." So. And it was just one of those, just really bizarre, But also, I sort of talk to other people, and they sort of have this kind of very storied, history of sort of being in the trenches and doing sort of, innumerable Kickstarters and everything. I always feel very guilty that I have this sort of very smooth runway. Do you know what I mean? But I'm not complaining. I mean, in a way, I think it was good because I got into it that much older. I'm in my late 30s.
Such
because
an
I got
old boy.
That
Oh,
much
so
old. No, don't get me wrong. I mean, not sort of old for the earth or anything, but there are people out there sort of doing it, and they're 23, 24, and more power to them. But I mean, I think if I hadn't had that sort of smooth runway, I mean, I'd still be sort of breaking my face on the door, But that's how it all sort of started, really.
So how did you find at that point then putting your ideas into script format? Was that an easy process for you, or something a bit more challenging?
I'm not. No, I won't be careful how I say this. Honestly, no, because I'd studied it for years.
Okay.
I'd studied scripts. I studied scripting. I dabbled for years. I just wasn't prepared to show anybody anything. And I wasn't prepared to do anything other. I would sit down and neck a bottle of whiskey and I'm not exaggerating, sadly, and write these sort of tedious sort of vignettes that would never kind of actually amount to anything and would never be kind of structured. And so the scripting itself was never the problem, because but I did that kind of that terribly, what I now see as a very kind of unprofessional thing of kind of waiting for the muse to strike. I think there's that very sort of romantic conception of a writer that there's that Hemingway thing of what do you do? Well, you sit yourself down, you shackle yourself to a desk and you bleed. But in practical terms, you can't do that day in, day out. That's not professionalism. Professionalism is doing the work. So if you're sort of wedded to this idea that you have to wait until the mood strikes you, that you have to wait for this sort of paroxysm, you're never going to get anything finished. And really, that was the sort of hardest lesson, and I think that's where Andy, bless him, I owe him probably more than anybody. But that's where Andy, I think, used to get very frustrated with me. Was because I did used to sort of speak about it in those sort of very in that very sort of flowery way, rather than treating it as it should be treated, which is it more craft than art. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But at the end of the day, you've got to create that product within a time limit generally. So,
well, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be. I mean, I would. So I know it sounds like I'm splitting hairs, and I don't mean to, but I would never refer to anything that I'm working on as a product. I'm sure others would. Don't get me wrong. I've got ideas above my station, but in terms of, it's funny. Like I saw this documentary a while ago. Sorry if I'm rambling here, by the way, but I saw a documentary a while ago called Jiro Dreams of Sushi, which is absolutely fascinating, right? And it's about this. This sushi chef in his 90s, right, who works in a tube station in Tokyo, and he's one of the only sort of 3 or 4 Michelin-starred sushi chefs on the planet, right? He's got 7 seats in this restaurant, and but he doesn't charge the earth or anything, and he just makes the same recipe day in, day out, right? And in this documentary, the interviewer is saying to him, well, you're an artist, aren't you? And he sort of pulls him up short. He says, no, I'm not an artist. What I do is the same as carpentry. Now you can make a good chair or you can make a crap chair, but that's really where the sort of pride comes in. You know what I mean? But on no account are you necessarily kind of painting a portrait. It's still it's craftsmanship, and I mean this only. I'm not saying this works for everyone. This isn't universally applicable by any means, but that's certainly the only way I can sit down day in, day out and do the same thing. And write as a discipline is if I treat it as a craft rather than an art. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what's your sort of process for a day's writing then? Do you follow a pattern? Do you stick to certain times?
I try to, yeah, just because I've got a kid.
Yeah.
And otherwise, I mean, I'm not saying that it doesn't bleed over and I feel really bad about that. But because, sometimes you got, your eyes are bigger than your plate, and you can take on a bit too much or whatever. Yeah, in the main, I mean, I generally work a pretty long day, but as anyone, I think a lot of people will tell you, a good quarter of that day is staring into space, but that's actually when you're doing the hardest work, right? Because you're sort of forging connections and thinking things through. But, outwardly, it just looks like you're sort of dribbling.
I'm wondering what your neighbours think when they look up and see you staring out that window.
Oh, well, I mean, it depends if I'm clothed, doesn't it? But, think like Terry Jones by that piano in Monty Python. I mean, I'd say, it's a pretty long day, but I set myself kind of page counts, but the thing is, it's quite elastic, right? In the sense that, you can pull a rabbit out of a hat, but I mean, one of the things that the studio does is, we don't go easy on each other. And that's the best thing about it, really, is that we all give each other, and I mean this in the nicest possible way, but we all give each other a hard time. So, whenever you're kind of, if a deadline's looming and you're kind of tempted to phone it in, just to kind of get the thing done so you can sleep, one or other of us will always kind of step in and go, no, no, it has to be good.
Yeah.
And that sort of raises the, I'm not saying that the other guys aren't sort of self-disciplined. They absolutely are. But I think if you ask them, I think we do tend to kind of raise each other's game. Some more than others. I mean, I certainly think that creatively, I mean, I benefit from their input possibly more than they benefit from mine. But yeah, it works. That's all I know.
So the studio you're talking about, this is the White Noise group. Am I right in thinking that? Do you want to just explain a bit of who's involved with that?
Okay, yeah. So that's it's Ram V, who's currently wrecking shop all over the place.
He just seems to constantly be pumping stuff out.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's but without any kind of diminution of quality.
It's all quality.
It's the thing. It's all it's just gold after gold after gold, isn't it? Dan Waters, who's currently writing Lucifer over at DC, and various other interesting unannounced and announced projects besides. Coffin Bound as well over at Image, which was just an extraordinary book, I think. There's Ryan O'Sullivan, who brought out Fearscape last summer, which is an absolutely incredible kind of metatextual book that was done through Vault. And I know a little bit of what he's got sort of bubbling away in the cauldron as well, and that's all very exciting. I mean, we're all very, very different people, but when we sort of come together to sort of workshop stuff, which is really, I mean, that's the thing. It's we've got sort of, between us, we've got sort of quite a bit of sort of Hollywood representation now and everything and all that sort of stuff. And people keep sort of, those guys will keep saying to us, well, when are you going to kind of formalize the studio and turn it into like a production house, or turn it into at least into like a limited liability thing and everything? And there were some early discussions on that basis, but Ram just kind of went, well, look, this isn't that, right? We're not in each other's pockets. It has to be more of a kind of factory records thing where we're all sort of free to basically, not to put too fine a point on it, to kind of to fuck off, right? So what we do is we just kind of, unless we're sort of, and we don't tend to do it with kind of company stuff, because that's sort of, there are a lot of NDAs involved, right? So I won't really get involved with Ram's DC stuff or Dan's DC stuff, because that's kind of NDA'd up. But when it comes to our own stuff, we just workshop it quite intensively together. And the idea is that we're all kind of at each other's disposal. So really, I mean, it's a layer of editorial before it ever gets to editorial, is the way I would describe it.
Okay.
You know,
that must be useful.
Yeah, and it's really kind of, it's certainly kind of helped me, because I mean, I was never particularly strong on structure, and those guys, don't get me wrong, they're strong on everything else, but one of the things they do is they really kind of hold my feet to the fire structurally and just make sure that everything I'm doing, because one thing I do, and Andy's kind of picked me up on this, from day one, which is I'm trying to kind of wean myself off it slowly, but I had this sort of habit of working from theme backwards, right? Mm-hmm. Which is great if you're in academia, but if you're trying to write a story, you can't, it's got to be character first. It's got to be, person X enters a strange world and something happens, right? And so one of the things that the guys do is, whenever they see me sort of backsliding on that, they will absolutely just mercilessly pull me up on it. Not in a kind of brutal way, but we'll just say, look, it's great, but it's a treatise. It's not a story. Go back and do it again. Okay. And then it comes out, and then it's good. So yeah. No,
I think that's something people could listen to and possibly utilise themselves if they can get a group together. Any creators, that's for sure. It sounds a really good idea. Right.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's a funny thing. I mean, we've sort of, and more power to them. It's fantastic. I think, it's very. I think it's the kind of industry where it pays to kind of roll deep, if you can. Get a bit of a scene going as well, because we're not really sort of reliant on geography anymore. Mm-hmm. So you can do these over sort of vastly sort of distributed networks and all this sort of stuff. But I think it is sort of worth doing, and then just sort of workshopping stuff really intensely, and it just works really well.
That's superb. Right, let's throw in some quick questions then. Right, 5 questions then. What was the last meal you ate in a restaurant?
Oh, blimey. I actually had it was a small plate, sort of tapasy kind of thing. I was at Capavino in Lancaster for Valentine's night. And so we just got these, there was a chicken satay and a sirloin steak, and I'm not vegan, clearly. And arancini or an arancini, depending on how you pronounce it, and like a chocolate fondant, and now I can't move.
I shouldn't have asked that. Nikki's looking at me now. Why have you not taken me there?
Yeah, why did you not do that?
Why? Last movie you saw at the cinema?
Oh, crikey. That was a really Frankie Howard one, wasn't it? Ooh! Doing my best Kenneth Williams. But, I'm trying to think. It was a while ago. Do you know what? I think it might have been Avengers Endgame, actually. It was a long time ago.
Well, that's a quality film to see in the cinema, to be fair. Definitely. The last video game you played?
I think it was Spider-Man.
Okay, on PS4. Mm-hmm. Not the PS2 version. We're talking a bit closer. Okay, the last TV series you finished watching in full.
Lock and Key.
We've not started that yet.
No, I've only got it on Audible.
What did you think?
Really liked it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's. I thought it sort of captured the atmosphere of the book.
Okay, we'll need
really
to...
well. In as much as it, that kind of New England uncanny, but also the kind of, because the great thing about, Lock and Key's great, isn't it? Because I don't know what it is about Joe Hill, but he has that extraordinary facility that his dad has, which is to kind of make the protagonists feel like friends. It's really bizarre.
Okay. And finally, what was the last board game you played?
Oh, Risk.
Risk.
Yeah.
Oh, the heavy stuff.
Oh, that is the heavy stuff. Jeez. We don't play Risk.
It's how I channel my psychopathy.
Right, so just a little bit about... You've had sort of three main comics, haven't you? Right? Arcadia, Turncoat, and Friendo. Mm-hmm. Which is your favourite and why of those three series?
Oh, really?
Yeah,
That's
go on.
It's like asking you to choose your favourite child.
Well, no, it doesn't necessarily have to be the story. It can be the creation process behind it. Obviously the later ones are easier, maybe. I don't know.
Okay, well, can I...
You're allowed different reasons.
I genuinely can't choose between Turncoat and Friendo. Mm-hmm. Arcadia, I think I was... Don't get me wrong, I really like it, but it has that thing, and funnily enough, it's the reason why a lot of people like it, and I'm not going to turn around and say they're wrong, right? But no, genuinely, but it had that thing of, I didn't know whether I was ever going to get the opportunity to write another comic again, mm-hmm. right? So the whole thing has that sort of breathless exuberance that you tend to get with sort of first comics projects, right? Which is where, I forget, someone said this to me a while ago, the second comic, your second comics project, right, might take you a year, right? But really, your first comics project's taken you 20.
Yeah.
So, because, it's been sort of percolating away. And so, if you read Arcadia, it's just everything I think about everything. You know what I mean? Because I didn't know if I was going to get another opportunity to sort of have a platform to go, and here's what I think about this, and here's what I think about that. So, there's all these sort of weird digressions about sort of skeuomorphism and like, I mean, it's batty. And also, I mean, I wrote Arcadia when I was working at this marketing agency. And I mean, it's really weird now, sort of, being sort of, in sort of 2020, when sort of, those same sort of marketing techniques are being used to sort of, hijack elections and stuff. But I just remember when I was writing Arcadia, when the idea for Arcadia came to me. I'm not saying I'm sort of clairvoyant or anything. It's just, I think to anyone in the industry with sort of, half a soul could see, this stuff could really be used for nefarious purposes. But like, I mean, Arcadia really sort of grew out of that. I mean, I was working in that industry and just sort of seeing how, that sort of horrible revelation that people are far less unique than they think they are, right? That actually there are a couple of thousand data points that can describe you pretty accurately, and you could probably be reproduced from that. And that really sort of put the shits up me, I remember. And that was really sort of where sort of Arcadia came from, I guess. But then, after that, it was more, let's write a cool story. And so I sort of fell into my flow a little bit. So, I love Turncoat, but I think honestly, Turncoat wouldn't be half the book it is without Artyom. He's just an extraordinary Artyom Trakhanov. Is a Russian artist. Just he's got a book out through Image at the moment called Protector, which is written by Simon Roy, which I urge all of your listeners to pick up because it's just heart-stoppingly beautiful. But it's this. He's just got this style, man. That's like, it's just, like Slavic manga. It's just insane. It's so lovely. And I said this thing where, for sort of 4 issues, I got to sort of borrow him from greatness, So, Turncoat, love. But Friendo as well. Friendo was really, that was, I love that book as well because it was almost kind of, it wasn't a formal experiment. It was more a kind of a sort of a compositional experiment, right? So I had the idea for the thing, and then, I mean, without putting too fine a point on it, right? The things that happened in 2016 happened, right? And that was just, the book had already been accepted. Mm-hmm. And then I got in touch with Adrian Wassell, the editor in chief at Vol, and I just said, look, some elections have happened and some elections have gone really badly and the world's getting really weird. So can I write this book really close to the wire. And he said, what do you mean? I said, I don't want a long lead time. I want to be I want to basically marinade in all the awful news, and just sort of write according to kind of how I feel on a given day. And he said, well, that's a really weird way of doing things. I said, yeah, but that's kind of, I'm not going to be able to bottle the kind of craziness that I want unless I do that. And he went, well, all right then. So, we were, we scheduled it in such a way that it was kind of coming out like, within a couple of months of the script being okayed. And so it kind of captured, you remember, I mean, throughout sort of, late 2017, early 2018, I think, or rather, sort of, in fact, sort of throughout 2018, you remember in 2018, all the crazy sort of started really kicking into high gear.
Yeah.
And people just started, where you're no longer reading weird headlines. You're starting to sort of know people who are behaving weirdly, and saying things that they wouldn't have said 6 months ago, that kind of thing. And that was what I sort of put into Friendo. It was that kind of feeling of like, oh shit, like the gravity's just gone. That's what I really wanted to kind of capture with that book. And so now I look back on it, and I don't think it's perfect. I don't think nothing I write is perfect, but I do think I did I had a creditable stab at kind of capturing that sort of feeling of what happens when the floor just suddenly gives way beneath you. That's what I was trying to go for.
Well, it's obviously worked because you gave an announcement last week, which I'll let you announce on here for anyone who's not read or seen anything about it on your upcoming series. I'm going to take this as the exclusive, even though the world knows.
Was the first time I've said it out loud. I've got a Marvel one shot. Marvel hired me to basically, they've got a big summer event coming up called Empire, which is being spearheaded by Al Ewing and Dan Slott. And the idea is that actually, I don't know how much of the solicitations they're going away. It's the big summer event anyway, and it's I've been given they've got this series running alongside it called Lords of Empire, which is basically all the sort of pivotal figures in the event, and it's going to be their sort of it's the kind of their backstory and how they're kind of materially relevant to the event. And I've got a character called the Celestial Messiah, who is the son of Mantis and effectively a tree. I'm not making that up. It makes more sense on paper, but he's this guy called Koi, who is the kind of product of the union between the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom, and was supposed to kind of unify all life. The book I've written is basically, he hasn't seen his mother in a long time, and it's basically their encounter, right? So says that, but Ram is writing a Thor miniseries within the same event. So we're both. I mean, Ram's done a bit of Marvel work before, but this is the first kind of series he's been given. So yeah, we're both. It's just really nice, we both kind of get to go onto our sort of furtive little group chat, and we're both sort of part of the same thing. It's really nice. I mean, just a lovely thing, and it's certainly kind of just one off the bucket list,
Yeah. So anything else on the bucket list? What would you like?
What would
Or don't you say you don't want to risk it, do you? I suppose.
No, it's not that. Do you know what I mean? I think I'm not superstitious in the slightest. I always feel with these things, it's. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I don't judge other people when they do this. This is just something personal to me. I always kind of feel like if whatever it is, if anyone, there's someone writing the things that I might want to do right now, and as far as they're concerned, and they're right to think that what they're doing is canonical and what they're doing is, definitive. So, the last thing I want to do is say, well, I want to do that when someone else is kind of having the time of their lives on that book. Does that make sense?
No, it does, yeah. You don't want to put anyone's,
I always kind of feel a bit weird when someone sort of goes, well, what do you want to do? Well, I want to do, this is not what I want to do, but just, pulling it off the top of my head, want to do Fantastic Four. Well, someone's doing Fantastic Four right now, and I'm sure they think they're doing a good job. So I'm sure I'm being overly sensitive, but I try and sort of, yes, of course, there are kind of things that I want to kind of check off. But broadly, like, I really like making my own stuff. I get more, I would say I get excited about collaborators,
Yeah.
It's the caliber of artists that I kind of get to work with now is just unreal. It's a funny thing actually, Alex, who is drawing the Marvel one shot. I got the I remember when I saw the thumbnails, which he turned around right in just hours, and it was weird. I described it to friends like it was like sort of getting into like a it was like sort of walking into a jacuzzi. Do you know what I mean? It's like real sort of luxury treatment. It's like, how long did it take you to do this? and it looks 20 times better than it did in my head.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Wow. This is it's like you feel like again, it's that kind of, you realize why these companies are where they are, and it's the professionalism. It's the fact that they can keep making kind of quality product. Now I'm using the term product, right? But they can make kind of quality books on that kind of really sort of frantic kind of schedule without any kind of appreciable dip in quality. I mean, I just marvel at it. Oh, God, then. But no, having had a taste of that, it's amazing what they do. It's amazing how quickly they turn around something that good. Well,
we'll look forward to that. So when's that comic release then? It's this year, like you say, the summer.
That'll be out that drops in May.
May. Definitely check that out.
Please order up, and the event itself, is it's a really, really good one. I've spoken to Al about it, and I've read quite a bit of it, and it's character at no point does kind of character get lost in all the sort of pyrotechnics. You'll know from sort of Al's run on Hulk, he's a very, very kind of character guy. And this is absolutely no exception. I think it's going to be a really sort of special event book, I think.
Superb. And finally, are you got any conventions planned this year? Any events you going to?
Yeah. Oh God. I'm off to a thing in Portland, Oregon tomorrow.
Nice.
And then from there, I'm off to LA because I've got some super secret work to do there. So I'm going to be out the country for 3 weeks, which is kind of daunting. It's the longest I've ever been away. But don't be wrong. It's an excellent problem to have. I get to have street tacos, But yeah, so I'll be doing that. So, but while I'm there, I'm doing sort of various sort of retailery things. Yeah. Should be doing New York Comic Con if they'll have me. Mm-hmm. Thought Bubble, always generally do Thought Bubble again. This is all, I say, I'll do these things. It's all dependent on whether they actually, put up with me. But yeah, so Thought Bubble, I think I'll try and get out to, the conventional wisdom, right, is that you should try and get out to sort of the US sort of twice a year to do these things.
Okay.
Just to sort of put your ugly mug out there, really. But it's a weird one because some of them. Every year I keep going, should I try and do San Diego? Should I try and do San Diego? And I just kind of think, well, it's going to be. I'm just always convinced that I'll get sort of like trampled by like a stampede of Deadpools. Do you know what I mean? Like that'll be it.
Deadpool's a Spider-Gwen, isn't it, basically?
And Harley Quinn.
Or like a few years ago, it was like Rick's from Rick and Morty. It was like Rick Sanchez. Just get trampled by Rick Sanchez. But like 500 of them.
What a way to die, though. Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I suppose it would be very sort of show appropriate, wouldn't it, to happen? Just absolutely kind of pounded to death by these guys. But it's difficult to kind of gauge which ones, because it's a funny one, right? Because you go to all these, the bigger ones, and it's not you can't really. It's not like you can sort of find a quiet corner to just have a chat with someone. So you're doing your best to be sort of jazz hands about it. And the thing is, we're Brits, we're terrible at jazz hands. We can't. There are some of us. Don't get me wrong. There are some of us who can be, can just switch it on. But I mean, I'm not one of them. I always there's always that kind of barrier, just that kind of. I'm basically being Frank Spencer, aren't I? All the time. It's just the assumption. Do you know what I mean? Just like you're sitting there. I'll tell you what. I've been storing up this kind of really witty bon mot for hours, but I just know that the moment it comes out of my mouth, I'm going to fart. Or I'll like walk into a door or something. It'll just be awful. Just don't bother. Just say nothing, Alex. Say nothing.
That's where like the UK cons, a bit more chilled. You can find those corners and those little areas, or the local pub. That's usually the best place.
The funny thing is, like I was talking to do you know Kyle Starks?
No.
Did Rock Candy Mountain done a lot of Rick and Morty comics actually,
okay.
But he's the funniest guy. I was talking to him about. I was doing a show in Portland, and he was asking me about UK shows, because I was really taken aback. Right, the first show I ever did was, it was easy by American standards, right? But I was really kind of taken aback by kind of how salesman-like or salesperson-like these shows were, right? Because you walk past every table and everyone's really. Don't get me wrong, Americans are scrupulously polite, but there was definitely a kind of, they had like a spiel, right? Every table had a spiel, they had a pitch, and like someone like had like hype men and stuff. It was I was really kind of, this was like 2015. I was really kind of taken aback. I'd never seen anything like it. And then Kyle, who, I sort of befriended at the show because, he sort of took me under his wing. I was like, you're going to be okay. But he was asking me about UK shows. He said, well, how does it work with you? If you're not sort of standing up going, oh, hey, man, how you doing? Do you want to look at my comic? This is like, Buffy the Vampire Slayer meets Harry Potter, in space, because we're not kind of, I think, it's a stereotype, but nationally, I don't think we're that kind of forward as a people, right? And he said, well, how does it work? I said, well, I think it's more kind of, it's the recommendation system. It's almost like it's peer review. So, so he said, how does it work? I said, well, basically someone comes up to your table, you tell them not to buy your book, but you tell them to buy someone else's book. And you just have to hope that the person who you told to buy their book then tells them to come back and buy your book. The whole thing's just really unnecessary.
We're just far too polite.
And just crippling social paranoia.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time, Alex. We'll get links up to your comics on the page. So if you're interested, if you've not read any of his, go and have a look.
Oh, definitely.
And we'll keep an eye out for the Marvel one out later in the year.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. Thanks very much. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much.
Welcome to Breakdowns, the comic art section of the podcast. I'm Pete Taylor. I'm a small press comics creator and illustrator. Online, I trade as This Man, This Pete. This episode, I'm talking to another comics creator about comics and how they create their own. This episode, it's writer and co-founder of Mayamada and manga mogul, Nigel Tumasi. Hey, Nigel.
Cool. Hi, Pete. This is the first time I've been called Mango Mogul. That's the new one. I'm gonna adopt that and put that on my business card.
I think you should. I always like the alliteration in the beginning. Yeah, definitely. But well, I mean, it's really good to have you on. It's a particular side of comics that I find very interesting. I came to it quite late, so I am looking forward to talking to you about that. But before we start, I know you've been a regular exhibitor at the Lakes Festival itself.
Yes.
So it must be a good show for you. I mean, how long have you been going to the Lakes Festival?
So I'm trying to think. I've done at least two. I can't remember a third one, so I'm going to say two. So it's fairly new to me as well. And the sort of one prevailing memory I have is a lot of rain. At the show, but yeah, it's like a nice show where you get the like larger shows like London Comic Con where we exhibit as well, but it's nice to have a smaller scale thing where you can like talk to people, have a few more conversations, but then also meet people I find at shows like Lakes who are new to sort of the world of comics, and it's good to talk to people on the outside, so to speak, as well.
No, it's right. I mean, I have had a few people come to the table literally saying, I don't know anything about comics, what's yours about? And that's kind of, it's like a little taster menu for certain people at the Lakes Festival. It's very approachable, very friendly, and they can wander around and just find something new. So I think that's a great side of it.
Yeah, and I think it helps to like just expand the medium. You need to reach new people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you are right. And there's a huge range in ages at the Lakes Festival as well.
Yeah.
You were talking to, people across all ages, which I find great as well. It isn't just, a bunch of kids coming in on a rainy afternoon. It's whole families or, it's really cool. So what was your personal start in comics? What was it about this great medium that first attracted you?
Yeah, I like that question because I always get to give like my very sort of random answer, which is so I had a very unplanned start. I actually have a background in engineering, so I went to I did like engineering at university and worked as a software engineer for a number of years. Before even sort of getting into comics. So like when I was younger, I used to like draw a lot and be into creating my own characters and stories. And then I got a computer and then sort of took a completely different turn and then just went into the small tech area,
right?
And industry. So the kind of the comeback into sort of comics and stories was in university, meeting a friend who's into like Japanese culture and anime and manga, and we both studied engineering, funnily enough, and then wanting to create something that had that inspiration but make it our own, so we can come up with our own stories and characters. So then we kind of got into it. So it's never like I've always wanted to make comics or anything. We sort of fell into it, and it's very, very like I can't stress how unplanned something like I can't stress that enough, but just like we liked creating characters and stories, and we liked the manga medium, so wanted to use that to sort of start this journey.
Yeah, I mean, there was a time I remember reading sort of backup stories about Japanese comics sometimes in the back of other comics some artists might mention.
Yeah.
But it was never particularly, on my radar until I suppose my daughters started, watching certain animes or certain would pick up the manga that started appearing in my local comic shop.
Yeah.
And there is something, I think very different in the world comics about manga. I think if you look through, maybe a book on world comics, a lot of them, obviously the styles of the art might change, but the actual process or putting together of the comic is similar. But then when you see manga, it's it's quite explosive, really, isn't it? It immediately looks, I think, quite different from a lot of other comics of the world. The difference in the wide difference in genres that you can find, the kinetic action, which has been picked up, I think, a lot more in Western comics since. But it's more expressive. You could argue it's more expressive or expressionistic. I think the change in the way characters are drawn, which is normal in manga, it certainly wasn't the norm in more Western comics.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think the more expression is interesting because you don't often associate Japanese culture with expression, like, wide-ranging expression. Obviously, I'm sort of to a certain extent leaning on a stereotype, but there is that idea. But then in the manga, it's like very expressive, very kinetic, and you'll find like the diversity. That's the thing that struck me. The more I get into it, and the more manga that I personally read, is the variety of story. And I think that's one of the things that attracted me personally, is that you can have just the most random ideas and settings and characters, but it still hangs together because it's still based on some kind of sort of human emotion and something that at its core is still relatable to the people reading it.
No, I mean, you're right about it being different from, certainly the Western perception of Japanese culture. It's seen as being, not exactly repressed, but it's very polite, isn't it? And it seems to be quiet, polite society.
Yeah, having said that, we did go to Japan a while ago, and the idea of the sort of the calm, quiet society got shattered when we had to take the last train back to our hostel, and that goes out the window, because I don't know if you've ever been literally crammed onto a train as everyone's trying to make their way back. All that politeness just went out so quickly.
At what point then? So you've started to I suppose it all comes from the characters in that sense.
Yeah.
I suppose, and that's the connection back to always liking your drawing. There is that kind of repeated character sometimes, isn't it? That you think, oh, okay, this is something this is a character that I want to explore a little bit more. So at what point did the Mayamada universe itself start? Did you go straight into it, or were you, were there a few experiments along the way?
No, straight into it. So that's the benefit of not planning and coming in with a bit of ignorance, is that you just go straight into it. So we had a start where we created this thing called Mayamada. There were no characters or anything like that, but it was just like a group of friends, and we wanted to do something with some kind of Japanese influence, but we were focused on fashion at the time. So that sort of didn't work because we were all engineering or computer science people. We had no background in business or design or anything like that, and that just didn't work. So after a couple of years of sort of pretty much just walking in the dark, that sort of fell away, and it was left to myself and my friend Lau to think of something where that actually made sense to us. So we sort of took a step back and thought, what do we want to do? That's when we thought, actually, we like creating stories and characters, so let's focus on that. So that's where the universe was born, so to speak. So we both like creating characters and stories, and we needed something that would allow us to do that, but still make sense in the context of a brand, so to speak. So we came up with the idea of the sort of Mayamada universe as a television network, where we'd make manga style comic books, and those would represent the different shows on the network. So it all ties together, and it meant that we can come up with like a cooking show or this drama or comedy or whatever, and even though they're just different random ideas, it still hangs together because of that sort of background. So we had that concept, and then we went to the London Comic Con in search of an artist. So we managed to find someone literally by walking through Artist Alley, as it was back then. seeing someone who we liked the look of her drawings. We just walked over. We said, "This is our idea. We need someone who can actually draw to help us with it." And yeah, that was years ago. And we've been working with her since. So an artist called Pinali, who actually now lives in the US. So it's a bit of a remote working situation, but it's worked so far.
Cool. Yeah, but that's great as well, that you can keep the relationship going.
Yeah.
So that was the core team, and that's remained the same, has it, over the years?
Yeah, up until last year. So sort of towards the end of summer, Lau stepped away. I would say, to make a long story short, he got married. That's that's my reason that I explained to people. So it's like, different kind of life direction and other consideration, which is fair enough. So, but I think along the way we've kind of picked up a number of people that help in the process and other parts of the brand. So now it's a case of me sort of trying to manage people in different tasks so we can still continue going and continue growing. Yeah,
I mean, it's a medium that thrives on collaboration in that sense, isn't it? I mean, it can be a help, but a lot of plates to spin.
Yeah.
And your primary role now, as well as as the plate spinner, you're so you're the writer, and I suppose you're the person that's the program controller, I suppose, to use the analogy of the Mayamada universe.
Yeah, I'm still trying to work on an exact "what do I do" title. I was at a networking event the other day, and I was trying to pin down what I do, because like events, like youth engagement writer, and yeah, I haven't worked it out. But I'm going to go with, what was that phrase you said?
Program controller.
Okay, so yeah.
Well, for the Mayamada bit, anyway. I mean, if it is based in a TV sort of production universe, which, I mean, it is an interesting approach, because as well as the actual stories, you have you do show the production team, don't you, behind the scenes discussing the show they've made.
Yeah, so we have this idea that I'm kind of building on from volume to volume, and it's essentially taken from what Marvel do with their after credit scenes, where we have like we'll release a volume and then we'll do a collector's edition, and in the collector's edition, after the main story, we'll do like a few pages of behind the scenes of the show, but then the network as a whole. So it shows like the characters from the show you've just read, some of the other characters in this Mayamada universe. So it's kind of tying the different things together, and I want to use it to give sort of hints to things that are coming, and then later in the year, hopefully we can create more sort of standalone comics from that behind the scenes part of the brand and build it out a bit more.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, it's a really interesting approach. And so have you got with your engineering background, have you got some sort of spreadsheet that you've plotted the progress of future series, or is it just something that you've got in the back of your mind? How sort of closely do you plot the progress of the volumes?
So at the moment, a lot of it is in the back of my mind, and I think this is kind of what I'm learning as you bring on more people, is that you need to put more of it down on paper or in a document, which will be a spreadsheet. Actually, my scripts are written in spreadsheet. Yeah, so what I'm thinking is like, so people, and it's like you give people an idea of where things are going. So I know sort of like the next story and the one after that, and sort of a rough kind of timeline of things. But then, like you say, it's a case of just being able to put that down a bit more. One of the things that we've started doing and working on doing more consistently is we have sort of Skype calls between myself, the artist, and my friend who edits our books, and then looking to bring on sort of concept artists as well, and just for everyone to talk about the latest story, the direction of it, and then kind of plan out a bit of the universe, so there's more sort of shared direction, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, totally. And then the writing process itself, I mean, is it something that you tend to sit down and you've got a very clear idea and you do it all in one go, or are you kind of just sort of...
It's definitely not that.
Chunk it. Yeah. Good.
Yeah, it's definitely not that.
I'm very jealous of people who can do that.
Yeah, I know. I think my process, so I guess I kind of work around the nature of trying to run this business and the other parts of it, so it tends to be quite scattered until it's sort of not, and it's like, okay, here's the rough deadline we're aiming for in terms of when we want to release, so that means I've got to get this done by that time and that. So I like to start with just like an idea and some kind of message. So like I said, I sort of no background in terms of like creating comics or stories, but since our first volume, Samurai Chef, I've just sort of made an effort to just read more about sort of storytelling, reading a lot of screenwriting books and picking up things over the years. So what I like to do now is start with like an idea and some kind of message, like what am I trying to say with this story? Who are these characters that are going to represent these themes? And then once I've got that, then like what's the context, what's the show, and all that. And then I just sort of make lots of notes. So I've gotten into a habit of when I watch a TV show or a film or read a comic or anything, I kind of make notes on, oh, that's an interesting character, that's an interesting way they've represented that theme, sort of dialogue ideas, and then I'll sort of just make continuous notes, and then eventually that'll turn into some kind of outline document. So it's a kind of long and sort of constantly growing document where I'm saying this is a story, this is the characters, and this is what everyone does. So I break the story down into essentially chapters, even though there aren't chapters in the books, but just it allows me to think about sort of what happens when and the different story beats. And then essentially say, like, you know, each part is going towards the overall idea and theme that I thought of at the beginning. So once that's done, then that's what we talk about in our Skype calls, and then that goes to the artist, and then it's essentially me telling her the story, and then alongside that is a script which goes into more detail about specific like dialogue and action in each part of the story, and then that's a spreadsheet. So I've got a Word document or Google document to be specific, and a spreadsheet. You got those two things, and then with that, then it goes to the artist, and she essentially takes that in and then tells me what she's heard through the sketches, the page sketches, and the rough idea of the panels. So I don't necessarily break down sort of the panels. I kind of leave that to her, but I'll say, you know, I think this section will take this many pages, and then she'll tell me if that's realistic or not. And then so we go back and forth. I make changes to the page sketches, eventually get to the final kind of thing. Then we're looking at it from the editor's perspective, making sure the story hangs together, sort of all that standard grammar and spelling, and then eventually we get a finished story.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it sounds quite organic, you know, and collaborative. So when you're actually, are you adding dialogue? You've got rough ideas of dialogue, and then the kind of final dialogue goes in right at the end, or is it a bit of both?
Yes, it's usually like once those two documents go to the artist, and I say, look, this is like I say it's always changing, so I'm not necessarily the final, but this is like the latest draft. It's got all the dialogue, so who says what, when, and why, like what they're motivated by. So I'll have all that finished. But what I've noticed, particularly with our sort of most recent one, is when I have the story in my mind, I see it a certain way and I see the character saying something. But then when I see the visuals attached to that, then the dialogue often changes. So a lot of what I do when I get that first set of, page sketches is actually what I've written doesn't necessarily make sense the way these characters are looking. So let me change that.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of it.
It's a bit of sort of, you can get a lot of extra character sometimes in the dialogue just when you see the art, isn't it? Because I'll do a rough draft of what I think people are going to say, but sometimes it's quite basic until the actual, like you say, there's a bit more emotion comes through, or even just the way a character's drawn might add a bit of swagger or might add a bit of extra depth.
I think what I notice is sometimes I've written too much, and because of the character's actions, actually you don't need to explain as much because you can see it. So I just need to sort of to pare down the words a little bit. That's
a big sort of screenplay adage, isn't it? That's come through quite a lot. Show, don't tell.
Tell, exactly.
I've listened to podcasts. There's a lot of different podcasts out there as well. There's one specifically on writers, and I listened to quite a few of those, and they were very interesting. As a medium, it's got there's a lot to learn from it, really, screenplays.
No, I agree. And it's interesting, the show don't tell, because I find that anime and manga somehow gets away with actually a lot of exposition. I'm not sure how they get away with it, but it seems to work in some respect.
And the message side of it has, I mean, you were kind enough to send me, I think, your latest 3 volumes. We've got Samurai Chef, Serious, and Hot Lunch.
Yeah.
And definitely, I mean, I'd started with Samurai Chef. I mean, monkey fighting food monsters. I mean, that is so in my wheelhouse. It's unbelievable. Absolutely loved it. But you can see the progression of, you mentioned that there's an evolution of sort of messages and themes. So you can see the story working very closely with the structure, I suppose, the added structure of having a message or a theme. And it really, I can see it would really help. I think that's another angle I haven't particularly thought of to telling the story, that it must be, that must have been a bit of a breakthrough to a certain extent, perhaps story-wise.
Yeah, and I think it first came from Pixar, to be honest. I read there's a book, Creativity Inc., that kind of charts the progress of Pixar from this like technology company to storytellers. And one of the things I learned, and just from watching Pixar films anyway, is that there's always a message, and I really like that about Pixar, where all the various characters and the situations they have is always based on a strong message, and I feel that that's the idea of stories, is for people to kind of a vehicle to process the world around us and the different themes within that. So I feel like a good story should carry some kind of message, and not necessarily like in a preachy way, because you want to, if you've got a particular view, a good thing that story does is maybe like challenge that and see the other side or the multiple sides to it. So it's something I'm sort of working on putting into the stories that we create in a sort of prominent way.
Yeah, no, it's I think it's you've cracked it in that sense. It doesn't sound preachy at all in the books, but I think there's definitely more to the story. It just adds to the story, I think, ultimately, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I mean, outside of comics, or rather, in addition to the comics, you've got other strings to your bow. You run comic workshops as well.
Yeah, that's a fun time. So we started. So after we established the brand, and I say established in terms of we had a comic, we had a volume, Samurai Chef. I think it was around the time of working on our next one, which was Serious. I think just through sort of connections, I had the idea where we do comic story workshops, and we go into schools and work with young people to kind of essentially build creative confidence through storytelling and comic storytelling. And they'll kind of many motivations for this, but I think just with the background I had going through school and going through sort of a more technical route through school, I kind of am now doing something sort of quote unquote more creative. I've seen both sides, and particularly seen how sort of the education system and to an extent society in general sort of treats your hierarchy of subjects. So at the top you've got your serious subjects of, you know, science, maths, physics, all that, computing, where if you do that you're serious about your future and you're going to do well. And then you've got things at the bottom of the hierarchy, which tends to be your creative subjects, your arts, your drama, your music. And I remember being at school and like we did not, well, I say we, let me not speak for everyone at that school, but I did not take those subjects seriously. I didn't take music seriously. I didn't take drama seriously. And then just seeing how actually it's a sort of big misconception, because we tell kids that, you know, if you want to be serious, you do these particular subjects. And if you're going to do something like music or arts, you're not serious and you're throwing your life away. But we all, like, I don't know, we all watch TV, we all listen to music, go to the theatre. So these are all industries where you can have careers in. Yes, it's not the exact same route, and in some cases it can be more difficult, but there are careers there. So it's kind of like with that, and then seeing how creativity is kind of devalued in school, and just wanting to do something to help young people sort of keep those, I guess, those ideas. So the idea with the workshops is we just go through the process of making a story and some characters, but in the process sort of teaching young people transferable skills. So things like brainstorming, how to put together a narrative, how to work together to tell a story, how to present your story, because that's another important thing, being able to stand up in front of your peers and sort of people in authority and say, you know, this is my idea and this is why I think you should care about it. So yeah, it's something we've sort of started and looking to do more. I do a lot of workshops around London, sometimes out of London, but that's the idea behind it, and just in a fun setting, because kids by and large are into comics and it gets them more engaged.
Yeah, me and my partner in crime, Mark, we've run a few community comic workshops, and you know, if on particular sessions, you'll have a crowd of families, you know, that are there for the whole session, and sometimes, you know, our sessions can run sort of 4 or 5. I think the longest was about 6 hours. It was supposed to be a drop-in event, but in fact there were people that, you know, literally came first thing and stayed all day.
Yeah,
and you've just got you got a room full of people who enjoy drawing and creating, and the fact that families will spend that time together, I think, is really you know, cool, that you've given the space that you're all sharing this one activity, and because everyone else is doing it in the room, then that's a sort of side to it that's encouraging.
Yeah, and it just allows those people to see that, oh, actually there's other people who are into this thing.
Yes.
It's, you know, it's not some like weird interest. It's like, okay, it provides that validation as well in some cases.
Yeah, there's a community of people who enjoy the same thing that I do.
Yeah,
and I think you're right as well about that. There's a kind of problem with self worth when you've got people forced into trying to do subjects that
exactly,
you know, that the school is wanting you to, and if you're not very good at it, or even just you might be good at it but don't enjoy it in comparison to other things, that ultimately leads to you just not, you know, particularly enjoying what you then go on to do in comparison to what you could be doing.
Exactly, and you see people who are just, I guess, unhappy and sort of leave what they're doing, and they use, in a sense, of wasted time where they could have been progressing in the thing that they actually are good at and can contribute to, you know, society. And
it is really interesting, that side. And I mean, there is connective tissue really with the other event you do as well, which is Gamepad.
Yes,
and that's community driven as well, isn't it? That's, I suppose, taking a solo activity or an activity that can be, you know, one member of the family can be sort of excluded because they're gaming, and it's about bringing people together and gaming together. Is that
exactly? Yeah. So it's an event. Again, sort of many motivations. I think the first motivation we had to start this event called Gamepad was just the fact of, and again I go back to how unplanned this all was. So when we started, I thought that you make a comic, make it look good, and people would buy it. You go to Comic-Con and people would buy it. What I actually found out is you know where this is going. What I actually discovered is that, you know, it doesn't matter if it looks good. And it's kind of the thing about comics and a place like Comic-Con is that you're essentially talking to experts who know what they know and like what they like.
Yeah.
And I found that by and large, most people don't want to take a risk. So even if something looks good, the quality of it is good, it's all there. If I haven't been told that this is good, if I don't know who these characters are, I'm less likely to take a risk, and especially give you money for it if I haven't been told it's good by someone else. So yeah, we found that. So we thought, and we'd done some events previous to starting Gamepad. So we thought, okay, we need to get people to know who we are. Let's use something that people already know. So video games, because a lot of our audiences, cross section of our audiences all like video games. So let's use that as a way to bring people to us. And in the process, they would find out about Mayamada and hopefully like us and want to sort of stick around for the ride. So we started Gamepad, and the idea was just a fun day playing games in the real world with friends, bringing that social element and trying to break the stereotype of, you know, what people think it means to play games or who plays games. So we started that, and then again, it's sort of the idea of like evolution is that we discovered the power of an inclusive community event where people of different backgrounds, ages, races, experience in gaming can come and in a safe space and just like enjoy this thing. And after sort of couple years of doing that, we were sponsored to do an event in the Grenfell area after the fire there, just to put on something that was free for local people. That they just come and just have something positive for at least a day. And then so what we did, the people that outside of that area, we charged the normal sort of ticket price, and we used that money to buy a Nintendo Switch for the community center that we held the event at.
Right.
And I think that kind of in my mind that crystallized the power of, actually, even if you don't play games, you can come and enjoy this, and the value of just seeing different people and breaking down those barriers between sort of whether it's social barriers, you know, age barriers, gender, whatever. So since then, it's just been a focus on just pushing that inclusion through the event and aiming to sort of build it up and essentially make it our. I always use the analogy of like Disneyland. So you have Disney as this universe of characters and they've got all this stuff, and then Disneyland is the physical space you come and experience the brand, and that's what I think of in terms of like this physical space where you come and experience the brand. But instead of like rides and stuff, we've got video games and cosplay and other things.
Right. It sounds like a great plan, and it's working well.
Yeah, it's like last year. So now we do like 3 events a year. And last year was the first time we did that consistently, and it was our best events. So, you know, we're still like a relatively small in the grand scheme of things, like sort of 100 to 130 people at a time, which is cool. And then it's just making that consistent, and then learning how to be an events organizer and how to actually scale an event, make it sustainable, all the while keeping people happy. And it's been a definite learning curve.
Yeah, it sounds rewarding though. I mean, that's what I get after doing a comics workshop. You know, you just feel, you know, really good. It's been time well spent. You've met some, you know, new people. You've seen some cool comic strips created in front of your eyes. It must be similar with the gamepad.
Yeah, no, it is. and to be fair, I don't always appreciate it just because I'm not always the best at kind of looking back at sort of what you have done. But the times when you see people like coming, you see like kids just enjoy. Usually when I look at the photos and I see, oh, okay, they enjoy themselves, or people thank you at the end, and I'm like, okay, yeah, this is something that is making some kind of impact, and let's see how we can do more of that.
Yeah, especially when you've got so many things on, it is difficult to remember that you're supposed to be enjoying what you do sometimes.
Yeah. I know that's when the whole like self-employed thing, and that can be easily forgotten.
And so have you got any other upcoming projects?
Actually we're working on a campaign, just because I like adding more plates to spin. I don't know what's wrong with me, but working on a campaign around video games and representation in video games.
Okay.
And it kind of comes from our gamepad event, but then also from working with young people and seeing some of the young people I work with from underrepresented groups in sort of technology and video games. So this campaign is around showcasing the diversity that does exist in gaming as a way to sort of inspire young people and also challenge the stereotype of, what does a gamer look like? So we're bringing together people, just different types of people in the industry, young people in education who want to work in the industry, for like a photo campaign around the question, do I look like a gamer? As a way to sort of provoke some thought in the industry and people who play games. So we're working on that to launch in the spring, just before our next gamepad event. So that's something we're working on. It's going to be public soon enough.
Well, listen, Nigel, thanks for the chat. The help, which I will now take back and put into my own story.
Yeah.
I think that's
You're
helped
welcome.
a great deal. But listen, all the best for future projects and your gamepads and your plate spinning.
Thank you.
Where can people find you online?
So you can, a few places. So mayamada.com, where you'll be able to see our sort of stories and sort of different things we do. For the gamepad event is just gamepad.events. The workshops are under the storyboard. So if you go to the storyboard.org, you'll see those. And then social media. So Mayamada on Facebook and Twitter. Mayamada Tees on Instagram, because someone already had Mayamada. What can you do? So slightly different on Instagram.
And have you got any cons lined up?
Yes, actually. So March is like the first kind of conventions and events for the year. So I'm doing the MCM Birmingham in March. And then before that, the Deptford Literary or Literature Festival, one of those words. It's like a sort of local event in South London. In May, I'm going to Portsmouth Comic Con for the first time, and then the London Comic Con again.
Cool. Well, I'm going to Portsmouth, so I will see you there.
Yeah, there you go.
Brilliant. Listen, thanks for chatting. It's been absolutely great. And I'll see you soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No problem. Cheers, mate.
Cool.
Right, I'm back. I'm fresh and breezy and awake and not
crying.
Not got sore eyes.
Oh, just something in my eye.
Right, let's do a bit of festival news.
Do it.
Leeds International Comic Art Festival partners with the first Philippine International Comics Festival.
Awesome.
Comiket, the Filipino comics and arts market, which helps nurture local comics communities, discover new creators and readers, and launch new local comics, is launching the Pick-Off, the Philippine International Comics Festival, this summer. I'm going to read from the website.
Do it. Blurb it.
Pickoff is an NGO created by comic creators and volunteers for the comics community, and it's been delivered in partnership with a number of international partners, including the British Council and the Lakes International Comic Art Festival. I'm not good at reading these things.
No, I know.
If Comic's mission is to nurture and grow the comics community, Pickoff's mission is to grow the readership of local comics and graphic novels, say the organisers, by publishing world-class Filipino comics and graphic novels to international readers. And there's also a competition for aspiring Filipino comic creators to launch the work there within that as well. So, yeah, I must admit, we've not looked at any that I can think of Filipino work. There's a list here which we may have to have a nosy at.
Yes, we will do.
And I've seen at some point down the line there may be a link up to the side of the world and bring them over here. So yeah, really interesting. This is what the Lakes does, doesn't it? That's different to any other certainly UK-based festival. They're jumping in with these worldwide festivals and really bringing that link of comics around the world. So yeah, I don't think any other event does that the way they do it.
No.
So different.
No. It's almost like they're always looking and sourcing.
Yeah.
Where they can help and stuff.
Helping and promoting and driving forward. So that's all it is for the Lakes, other than that early bird tickets are still on sale.
Get them!
Then
you get to meet us. What more would you want in life?
Depends who you are, we might run away.
Well, that's true. I mean, some of you, yeah.
It's not long before applications for the tables close. So if you want to sell at the event, then get there quickly. And also, good luck to everyone who entered the Myriad graphic novel competition.
Yes,
as
good
that
luck.
is now closed as well.
Yeah.
So fingers crossed to everyone, but especially you.
Oh, like I said, yeah.
Who knows?
No, not me.
Your work is up to the level.
It's really.
Your work is up to the level. Unfortunately, you're competing with other people, and it's all about, at the end of the day, those judges' opinions and thoughts on what they feel would work within Myriad. It's not anything,
on people's quality. No,
definitely not. So it's just down to feelings on the day almost.
Yes,
so we just have to wait and see.
Well, I hope they laughed.
We were watching a series which we didn't realise was a comic book, did we?
Nope.
I am not okay with this. Which was, I did have it up a second ago.
You lost it now.
I've completely lost it.
We've only got one more episode to watch as well. I'm not sure how they're going to tie it together. I don't think they're going to tie it together.
Well, I'm reckoning it's probably
Series 2.
Charles Forsman's graphic novel. There we go. Which was also, we didn't realise he'd wrote The End of the World as well, which is also a TV series which we've not seen.
No, but we've been meaning to watch
and I need
that.
to obviously look into his work because I've not read anything
I need
of
to
him.
find out.
So the story follows
Sid,
I was going to say a young girl, who realises she has superhero powers, superhuman.
Well, they're kind of coming out, aren't they?
Which come out through anger.
Yeah.
Essentially. And it's her being a complete nerd geek, oddball, whatever you want to call it. She's obviously different to everyone else in the school, bar a few people.
Yes.
She's one of them that everyone looked down
She's
on,
one of
but
us.
effectively we were all the same.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's it. She feels a freak, but everyone does at that age.
And it follows, the story of her dealing with these powers as well as dealing with the death of her dad, dealing with a mother that doesn't understand her.
No, who hasn't gone through the grief process. Well, she's angry at Sid, isn't she? Because Sid idolized her dad.
Oh God, here we go again.
It's all right. Do you need another tissue? You're fine.
I'm fine.
And she, as the mum, obviously saw different sides of her father, so she's angry at her daughter in a way, isn't she, for loving him so much and not as much for her. So they're clashing.
Dealing with her own sex life and who and what she likes. And,
Well, it's all puberty, isn't it? Yeah.
And the actress who plays
Sid.
I'm no good with names.
You're really not.
No, I never have been.
She was in it.
Yeah, what I'm trying to find, I'm making sure I'm getting the right person. Anyway.
How's that? Dead air? You keep clicking there. I'll start humming. La, la, la.
Go on then. Sophia Lillis, who was, like I say, in it.
Yes.
She's wonderful.
Yeah, she's really
in
good.
This role. It feels like the role's made for her specifically, and I can see many roles being made for her down the line because she's got such a face that can just portray depression and dismalness and
bless her,
being fed up. Oh, because when she smiles, it's completely different.
Yeah, she's got a fantastic smile, but she doesn't smile much in this one.
Not in this.
No.
And also Stanley.
Yes,
Did you realise Stanley was young Peter Quill?
No.
In Guardians of the Galaxy.
No.
Yes.
He grew up.
Well, it was like 7, 8 years ago.
Oh, stop making me feel old.
Well, maybe not that long old ago, but yeah, about 5 years at least.
Oh.
Anyway, yeah, so that was him.
Oh, gosh.
Again, he plays a wonderful nerdy character.
Yep.
Who I wish I was like.
Do you want to be like Stan?
Back there, I wasn't, because I would never have had the balls to be like him and just stand out and do my own thing.
I feel sorry for Stan. He's got a horrible home life, and Sid is always mean to him, and he holds a light to Sid, and Sid's not really that interested in him. And it's like, oh, Stan.
That's because as a lad, when you like somebody, that's it. They are the.
And he seems to be stuck in the 80s, doesn't he? With his Enya t-shirt.
That's what I'm saying.
And all the rest of it.
I like that. I wish I'd had the guts to be me as a kid.
Yeah.
But
Sorry, you could be me as an adult.
I am.
Or me. You could be
apologise.
me as an adult. You could be me as an adult.
I'll be you. Oh, blimey, Gavin, I'll be you
I
as
don't
an
sound
adult.
like that.
Apples and pears and Gavin.
Oh, get you on the dog and bone.
Just say phone. It's easier. It's easier.
Oh, can I have a Scooby?
Anyway, really enjoyable series on Netflix. Well worth checking out, and they're only about 20 minutes long.
Yes,
each
yeah, they're
episode.
really short, aren't they?
So
yeah.
you can just flick it on and away you go. So yeah, no, loving it. Loving it. Tonight, as we talk on the 1st of March, we start our campaign into the world of Warhammer role-playing.
Yes.
Why did I sound like Picard?
I don't know, because you're a mad dwarf.
Yeah, so the plan with that is, if we're going to record what we do.
Are we?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, if it comes out as an editable, interesting story, I will put it out as a podcast.
Okay.
Depends on how it comes out and whether it actually sounds interesting or not.
It'll be me going, what? I've got about.
Well, that's why I said editable. I've got to edit a lot. This podcast
Nikki
here
even
doesn't
there?
require much editing. So if you're into role-playing games, then there could be, possibly,
maybe.
Including that will be Mike as well.
Yes, because he's sitting next to me. He's an elf too. Me and Mike are elves in this.
I'm a dwarf slayer.
You're a dwarf slayer, which is really funny. You're 6 foot, whatever, and you're a dwarf slayer. Yeah. I'm 5'4" and a really tall, skinny elf, because I am a dwarf. How's my watch?
Shut up. There we go.
And Mike is a female elf as well, so we're ganging up on everyone. But I'm a bard. So I'm absolutely of no use whatsoever in any battle. I can smack him over the head with a lute.
Well, actually, no, you're an entertainer.
I'm an entertainer. I'm a busker at the minute.
This is Warhammer.
Sorry, I'm an entertainer. I'm a busker. I have a wooden bowl and a lute, and that's all I've got. I'm going to just strum a tune in the background.
Yeah, but my whole thing, being a slayer, is to die. So essentially, once this campaign gets to an end, I've essentially got to die. To be successful, I've got to die.
I just want to have
You can continue your story into further campaigns.
I'm going to use your death as my opus magnus, whatever it is, for the song that will take over the world.
I don't die, I fail.
Yes, because I've just got to have my song played in every tavern.
Well, it could be like Gotrek from the Warhammer
Yeah, just
world,
don't
where
die.
he doesn't die because he's
just
so good.
Keeps going.
I've just got to keep rolling.
You could do that too.
But that's the other way in it, I suppose. You look at it as if you do die. Well, actually, I meant to do it.
Yes. Cat's gone mental.
So, yeah, listen for that. We'll let you know if it's actually going to come out as a podcast.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah.
There'll be 3 hours of recording tonight that I'll have to knock down to a couple of episodes worth if it's going to happen. So, yeah.
It'll be more like, no, Nikki, you can't do that. No, just roll the dice. What?
So, thank you for... let's move on. Thank you very much for listening.
Yes.
We've no idea who's on the next episode.
No.
We still need to work it out. But until then, enjoy your comics.
Enjoy your comics.
I was coming out with a tagline, but it didn't work.
You just gave me a weird look and just
Well, I was hoping
paused.
you'd continue.
Oh, no.
No. Anyway, okay. Thank you and goodbye.
Bye. Thank you for listening. Find out more about the festival at comicartfestival.com. Find out more about the show and how to contact us at comicartpodcast.uk. Find us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. Music composed by Pop Noir.